Hi, everyone. Welcome to Aurelia's Virtual Book Club. We are discussing Vulcana, and Brian came back. Yay!
Hi there.
Okay. Um, I finished the book.
Cool.
Yay!
Hey,
I didn't stop reading it.
great. I mean, there's a lot of words in there.
There are a couple books that I could not finish, and one of them, it was really bad. I had to read A Tale of Two Cities for my 8th grade English class, and I had to read it and I had to write a report on it. I started that book in September, and by June I still had not gotten more than 20 pages through because I couldn't force myself to read it because it
Yeah.
was too verbose and dense and slow and boring.
Yeah.
Anyway, and it's hilarious because his stories are awesome.
Yeah.
Every time I've seen either a stage or a movie adaptation of his work, I'm like, this is awesome. And then I try and read his actual books. I'm like can't.
Yeah.
Anyway, so your book is better, in my opinion, because I could read it.
Thank goodness. Wow. First hurdle
I got all the way through.
Excellent. Okay, lay it on me. Your honest opinion.
I liked it.
Good.
It was, yeah, so pretty early on, I guessed that, what's her actual name? I'm thinking of Sandra. I thought it was Sandra, but I wasn't sure.
Yes.
I guessed early on that Sandra was the acolyte, but then I changed my mind 5 times before the actual reveal. So that was kind of fun.
Cool.
I was like, I don't know. I think it might be just because I've read so many books that I know how stories work.
Yeah, that's a danger when you're a writer. You start plotting ahead of the writer himself. So yeah, I did the same thing.
Yeah, but you got me to change my mind a few times. So also good. Yeah, the reason I kept switching my mind is because oh man, I'm just terrible. Terrible at names.
Angelique? I'll throw names at you.
No,
Angelique,
the guy.
Barry.
Yes, I knew it started with a B and I knew it wasn't Brian, but
Yeah, I'm never going to be the villain in my books. I'm
tired,
right now.
my brain's not working. Anyway,
all right.
Barry. The reason I kept switching my mind about Sandra was because Barry and Sandra were together, and I thought it would be too obvious if they were the pair. So it's no, he can't have made it that obvious.
Yeah, watch me.
So it worked because everyone's trying to be all sneaky always, right? Every book you read, they're always trying so hard to make it not who you expect it to be that you get trained into expecting it to be whoever you don't expect it to be. Does this even make any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I was raised on old mysteries and watching Columbo, where in Columbo you knew who killed the person because it was in the first 10 minutes. And then the rest of the show is just trying to discover how is Columbo going to trap him. And I knew that, astute readers such as yourself would try to get one step ahead of me. So I just decided to make it as obvious as possible and still be misleading. So
I think it worked.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, and I liked Vulcan. I liked his personality.
I fell in love with Vulcan pretty fast. I admit that he's a fun character to write.
Yeah, I also kind of like rebels who don't like to follow the rules because they're the rules. They follow the rules only if they make sense. That's totally me.
Yeah, and the more I read up on Vulcan, it was just he was a prankster. He was a turd to his dad, his mom.
Like
It's like,
Loki a little bit.
yeah, a lot of more like a more socially acceptable Loki. If
Hmm.
Loki could have forged armor, he might have bought his way into the affection of the other Norse gods. Um,
Yeah.
and I see Vulcan's life of service as being kind of like bribery.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's a terrible person. He does all these cruel things to us, but gosh, he makes great armor. Let's keep him as a friend.
He has a use, even if he's annoying.
Exactly, yeah.
But I didn't think he was annoying. I thought he was awesome.
Cool.
I really liked. Okay. I really liked the thing with like the ring
Mm-hmm.
and the necklace.
Cool.
I really
Cool.
liked that, and I
Yeah.
liked how you let the reader know, sort of like you gave the reader clues to know
Mm-hmm.
that it wasn't the necklace because she bought the necklace, but you
Mm-hmm.
didn't specifically say that she'd made her armor into the like second ring.
Mm-hmm.
You just like were like she has two rings now, and like that was kind of cool. You had to think about it a little bit.
Hey, yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, I was raised reading a lot of old classic mystery writers, and one of the things I learned was always play fair with the readers. If you're going
Mm-hmm.
to present a mystery, give them the clues, misdirect them a little, or a lot in my case, but definitely play fair with them, even if
Mm-hmm.
they go, "Oh, I should have guessed that." In the end, you leave everything out so that everyone can discover it, and everybody has the same chance and the same opportunity to try to get ahead of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious about Gabby and Eliz and
Mm-hmm.
what they're gonna do. Because it sounded like, I don't know, it sounded like they were still up to nefarious things that were beyond the company and making this
Mm-hmm.
gas station.
Yes, there are. I do have plans for both of them that I will probably start teasing in the third book because I do plan for them to come back in the fourth.
Okay.
Uh, I definitely have plans for them and for those files. That
Yeah.
it's going to be a way that we open up the world a
The
little
files
bit.
that are hidden supposedly on some
Hmm.
unknown cloud server.
Yeah, and that were burned onto the disk. The ones that show Vulcana coming out of the storm cellar.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which were
I
supposedly deleted. Supposedly.
supposedly, but that's the thing. It's going to open up into a full-fledged superhero uh, battle, shall we say, in the fourth book that I'm planning. And the reason I'll tell you right now why I chose the fourth book was that being a comic collector, the number 4 issue on several major series turns out to have like a major event, like in Fantastic Four number 4. Prince Namor the Submariner returns. In the 4th issue of the Avengers, Captain America returns from the Golden Age.
Mm-hmm.
Justice League number 4, Green Arrow joins the Justice League of America as their first new member. The Defenders number 4 has the first appearance of the Valkyrie. And that Valkyrie is another name that you're going to see pop up in the name that pops up in the next book, actually. Little spoiler
Does
there.
Kim turn into one?
It's that gender reassignment thing. We're gonna have Barry turn. No, 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 no. We.
No, this is a spoiler for the next book. You can't actually
Oh,
tell
I'm
us.
sorry. Oh no, I changed it all. Oh, darn the bad luck.
You're allowed to
Uh,
tell us anything that happens in the first book, but not anything that happens in the second book. Otherwise, like,
well,
why
no,
would we read it?
exactly. Well, I'm not gonna tell you how the Valkyries figure in. See,
Mm,
but this will be like an Easter egg for your readers and
mm,
listeners and
cool.
such.
Yeah, I like Valkyries. I was in Vienna once, and I decided that since I was in Vienna, I had to go to the opera, of course.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I did, and it was Wagner's The Valkyrie.
Ooh, nice.
It was so good.
I bet. I bet. But yeah, it's going to be one of those things where we're going to pull in a lot more mythology with the second and third book, but the fourth one is going to be a superhero fest. And by then, we're going to see Gabby and Eliz come back. She will figure
Cool.
into it. So,
On one side or the other, or both.
yes. How's that for a very political answer? Yes.
Well, I gave you every possibility in that.
Yes, that's true. I can't disagree with any of how perceptive of you. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I will say also that my partner in this, Trevor Eric Hawkins, wants me to bring back Barry, which will be difficult, but it's in the cards too. So, and that's one thing I want to do with Vulcana as we go along. We're going to have people switch sides. We're going to have people we build up as, you think being on one side of the angels or the other, and turns out they may not be. We're going to change some perceptions along the way. And the goal is to have each book, of course, so that you can pick it up fresh and not have to worry about what came before. But it will become a richer reading experience if you do read the ones before. Plus, my bank account will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. One thing I thought about as I was reading it, and as I read your author note at the end, was have you ever considered doing essentially a graphic novel version, like an adaptation, to have both things?
Funny you should mention that. Yes. I have been getting into more comic book writing, which I think we talked about last time. And Trevor and I, again, are going to be doing some comic books together. And one of the stories is going to be a backup of Vulcana, and we are looking at giving Vulcana her own story, her own book, rather, with the idea that each volume of the comic will have a few things that might fill in some of the holes that might have appeared between the books. So volume 1 would
that's really cool. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Because some of the graphic novels I've seen are just exactly the same story as the book. So you either read one or the other depending on what you want, or unless you're a crazy fan and then you get everything, right? But it makes sense to have it be pieces in between.
Well,
almost it makes the comic almost like a trailer.
Exactly.
For the book.
Right, or you see some of the short films that they make, like for Doctor Who, between episodes, that not only tease the episode to come, but fill in a few holes that they didn't have time to examine during the course of the regular show. This way we can introduce characters that will appear in the books and also deal with characters from the books and perhaps give them a little closure in the course of the comic book. You hit on an interesting point about adapting the book, which is not off the table, but I have to admit that, of course, being the elderly comics fan that I am, I've gotten to the point where I kind of resent buying the comic book, then buying the trade paperback, then getting the animated movie, then the audio disc. It's like I'm paying over and over for the same story. And with this, I'd like to kind of keep it fresh. And with the kind of technology that's available now for publishing, it seems almost criminal to let something go out of print.
Yeah.
When it's so easy to keep it in print.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in 30 years the concept of out of print is going to be foreign. How kids now don't know what a fax machine is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think out of print is going to be a similarly defunct concept.
I agree, and right now with the brouhaha in Congress, as we record this, going on about the concept of orphaned works, which are basically, for those who don't know, works of art or literature where the person who owns the rights to them maybe can't be contacted for whatever reason, and they might still be alive, um, but for whatever reason, they are not defending their copyright. And there's a lot of debate going on about this right now in Congress, I understand. And I think it behooves a lot of people now, especially with print on demand type publishing, that they've got to have a pretty good reason not to keep something alive in print. I think it behooves every publisher to do that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Hmm.
Now, let me ask you.
Yeah,
One thing I wrestled with this, being um, I I am sensitive to the idea of a female protagonist, and I hope you liked Angelique.
yeah, definitely.
I recognize I was piling the problems on her. Um, and I can justify it within the concept of it progresses the story. Now, could you relate to Angelique in any small way? And
Oh
do
yeah,
you?
absolutely.
Oh, cool, cool.
I mean, because in real life, okay, when something goes wrong,
Mm-hmm.
everything goes wrong.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like
Cool.
that's just all of the like times in my life when something bad happened, it was always part of a series of unfortunate events.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like actually, which was, when I read that series, I liked it for that reason.
Yeah. Same
Um,
here.
you know, it's yeah. When things are going good, everything's going good. When things go bad, everything goes bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's my life philosophy, I guess.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that because you get people who um, feel they represent a demographic, and I hate to
Mm-hmm.
make it sound so cold as that, but they think you're being mean to them, not recognizing that conflict is the basis of fiction. That
Yeah.
you have this conflict, usually through unfortunate events. It's not how they didn't write Harry Potter about how will Harry and Hermione take care of the pot of gold they find at the base of each of their beds while unicorns are peeing rainbows outside of Hogwarts. Nobody wants that. Um,
Right.
but I am also sensitive to the violence against women aspect, and I was really I didn't feel I went overboard
No, I don't think
outside
you
of the
did.
context of the story, and it's good to hear. That's good
Because
to hear.
like it's first of all, it happens a lot more than people want to admit in real life.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's an issue people should be aware about. And
Hmm.
this is my opinion. I like edit an anthology of domestic violence awareness short stories and poems every year. So like
Exactly.
so for me, I think it's important to have stories that raise questions that let people talk about the issues without necessarily having to share what personally happened to them.
Hmm.
Because a lot of like I'm not a victim of domestic violence, but I know a lot of people who are, and it takes a lot of trust
Hmm.
um and like a very deep friendship before they'll admit anything and tell you any real details.
That is true.
And a lot of people, the statistic in the US is 1 in 4 women will be abused at some point in their lifetime.
Hmm.
And for the world as a whole, it's 1 in 3.
Hmm.
Um, but that means that there's, 2/3 of women in the world are never going to experience this directly. So
Hmm.
the only way for the people who don't experience it directly is to have stories, whether real or not, that that cover this topic, right?
Hmm.
So no, it wasn't
Good.
too much.
Good.
I think I think the superhero aspect of the story kept it from going like if you read some of the um fiction or memoir that are like contemporary fiction about
Hmm.
people who are abused and trying to escape and stuff like that, that can be very, very dark and very depressing and like it
Right.
sucks you in forever.
Hmm.
Which is
Hmm.
why I picked short stories and poems um, for my anthology.
Hmm.
But the superhero part of yours, like, and the violence, it makes sense in context. So it never
Good.
got like it never became like Criminal Minds bad. if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to just go into the realm of violence porn sort of
Yeah,
thing, where it was
yeah,
like violence for its own sake. That was something I really worked on when I was writing the book. So, and that's why I'm gratified to hear,
yeah.
you know, how you relate to that. That's cool. Although I did get one, I have a friend who is reading the book right now, and he's giving me a chapter by chapter critique. And he had just passed chapter 18 and starts calling me obscenities, but in a good way. That like I can't believe you did that. And I actually have a moment, and here's another spoiler late in the book. After all the things I do to Angelique, and
Hmm.
Angelique fights back. That's what I wanted her to do. I wanted her to fight back, even if it's just one of those, you know, knee jerk reaction. I'm not going to take this BS anymore. And then later she's like, "What did I just do?" Sort of thing,
Yeah.
which is kind of the situations I find myself getting into at times. But my wife went through the book, and I realized I wanted her to be able to pull up stakes and move to St. Louis temporarily. But to do that, she had like a room full of furniture, and so that's where the covering the tracks with the explosion came in. And my wife read that, and
Hmm.
she's like, "You bastard!" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "You had to destroy her furniture, huh?" I'm like, "I've killed her 3 times. I've
Yeah, but
hobbled her. I've done all these things to her,
that
and
didn't
you're
like phase me at all because she's very clearly the type who doesn't really care. Like she's not a thing. Like
right."
it's not in her personality.
Exactly.
Um, whereas like if I were Angelique and you
Yeah.
had done that to me, my
Yeah.
life would be over.
Yeah, I'd be thinking my comic collection going in flames, and I'd be like throwing
Yeah,
myself into the blaze to follow
yeah,
them. Yeah, that's it.
yeah.
I had a friend who actually moved from one city to another to be with her fiance, and she could fit everything into the front seat of her compact car. And I'm like,
That's really impressive.
yeah, it's like, part of me is impressed, and the other part is like, how can anyone live like that? I need a house. I
I
need a
know.
castle. I need a TARDIS, to store all my
Yes, a
crap.
TARDIS would be awesome.
That would be. And I'd probably use it to go back and find all the back issues of comics and books that I wanted.
Hmm.
I'd
Yeah,
be missing
I'd
a
go back in time
radically.
to get all of my like vintage sewing machines and like
Oh
bring them to the
yes.
future so that they wouldn't like have broken power cords.
Yes. Yes. Oh yes. I
Yeah,
feel it. I
as
feel
one of many things. Yeah, and
it.
then to meet all of the like interesting people, like Shakespeare and
Yeah.
Jane Austen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and confirm events. One of the first time travel novels I ever read was Up the Line by Robert Silverberg back in the late 60s. And one of the aspects of it was that this company would take people into the past to witness various events, but the rule was you could never look behind you because you
Mm.
didn't want to see yourself, because many people would take the trip over and over again. And
Hmm.
the most popular stop on these travels was the crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
Of course.
Yeah, and that's it'd be kind of interesting to go back and see those kind of events.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The assassination of Julius Caesar.
yeah, or standing on the grassy knoll in Dallas in November 1963. I'll
Hmm.
come back
Yeah.
with stuff and say, hey, conspiracy theorists. You know.
Yeah, there's so many interesting things that happened in history.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like being able to go from like place to place all at the same time so that you get like all of the sides of the story and not just the side that, the victors
Yeah.
tell you in history
Exactly.
books.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it'd make my book tours a lot more simple because I wouldn't have to drive 5 hours to get someplace.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Hmm.
Yes, look at your notes.
I'm looking at the book.
Oh, good.
I didn't make any notes.
Oh,
I never
oh,
make notes.
you mean this book available at Amazon and all fine outlets?
Yes.
Hi there.
That we've just like spoiled all of the like good
Yeah.
parts of.
Yeah, well, it is not necessarily the destination; it is the journey, and I'm
That's
hoping there's
true.
more good parts than just that. And of course, if that's not enough, there's also Santastein.
I thought, okay, that reminds me. I thought it was really funny
And
how you had
conflict.
Kim reading Stanley Stein at the beginning.
Yes.
I was like, Brian would totally do that.
I couldn't resist. I didn't even try. Yeah, and that's the thing. When people read this, there really is a Kim Perry. She is a very sweet lady, a dear friend of mine out of the St. Louis area, and she emailed me one day, and she's like, "Put me in one of your books." Okay, and so I did, and I told her I'm putting you in the book, and she's like, "Okay, don't kill me off." Okay, you know, don't turn me evil. Don't make me the consort of the devil, sort of thing. It's like she's got this whole list of demands that I love her for. It's like, yes, I'll babysit your character. Yes, I know it's you. But the fun thing was, I did a show in St. Louis about 3 weeks ago. She happened to be there, and I actually sold a book on the basis that you can get one of the characters to autograph it, and she's standing right behind the customer. So
That was awesome.
It was fun, and she's like, "What am I doing?" I'm like, "Shut up and sign. You're part of the book." And she's going on Facebook later, "I can't believe I just signed a book that I'm in." So
Awesome.
yeah, she's wonderful. She's wonderful. So we couldn't help but put her in there upon request. So
Okay, I have a question.
certainly.
What made you pick tentacles?
Well, no, it's not an attempt to get the tentacle porn audience captured within the demographic of the readership. I just loved this image that popped into my head of this old Thor character from the comic book Thor, and it's Ego, the living planet, and it has a face, and it has like mountains and all the landscape of a real planet, but it's got a brain inside there. And I just started thinking then, well, what if we had like something that looked like a planet, but it had all these little tentacles that were popping up like acne and then exploding and doing all these vile things, basically trying to one-up the Lovecraft angle there. And that's where it kind of evolved. And as I was writing, I would come up with something new for this thing to do, and then I'd go back and rewrite everything so that it stayed consistent and that it stayed icky all the way through. So that was my motivation for that. How gross could I get with a living planet that was an elder god?
Yeah, I was just curious because sometimes people write their like creepy non-human people things as whatever it is that they're afraid of most. So I was curious.
Yeah, well, I'm not specifically terrified of tentacles. They don't thrill me, but I don't think I would run screaming, or I don't believe I have any phobias relating to tentacles, although I do know people who do, and they're the ones I want. But but no, I just wanted something kind of icky and creepy and something you probably couldn't unsee once I described it to you. So that was my intent with the Olders. And also the idea of exploring the idea that so many of these beings, whether they're alien or godly or in some way otherworldly, that we as humans impose our values upon them.
Yeah.
And that their motivations would probably be totally different than ours, to a point where we could not relate to them as a species. And that's kind of what I was doing with the Olders, even to the point where I deliberately had it so they never ask questions, because in my mind the Olders just never came up with the need to interrogate another being.
Yeah.
Especially a being that could reorder reality. You know, it's like, I'm not going to ask you a question because I can shape the answer. So
Yeah.
that was just something else I wanted to delve into with this. And nothing says that we've seen the last of the Olders or their acolytes as well.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of cool how when Sandra tries to say their actual name, it like turns her throat into like shards of crystal.
Yeah, I had a discussion with my wife, who is also my editor, and a very good one, I will say. And she brought that up that initially I had it that human vocal cords would be unable to say the syllables, even if they knew the Babel tongue.
Mm-hmm.
But she kind of started asking me questions, and it eventually led to the idea that, well, maybe it's not that they can't say it, they can, it's just not a real good idea, and here's why.
Yeah. That was cool.
Thank you. Cool. Oh boy.
I also really like how she can like power up and power down her powers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, I haven't read every comic book ever, but like the ones that I've seen that have superheroes with superpowers they can power up or power down, there was never an explanation of how or why or like any of that. So I liked that you answered those questions.
Well, I wanted her to not exactly have like a magic word
Yeah.
or, you know,
Or a magic costume or something.
Yeah,
like, she can have her powers even if she's not wearing the armor. It's just not probably a very good idea.
Yeah, and we teased in there that she will have different power levels depending on what she wants to do and needs to have. And we've still got a few surprises with her powers as well. Vulcan hasn't seen them yet, for instance. But I wanted to make it not only something that wasn't easy to do. It wasn't like her predecessor who could just say, "I wish to become," and then he is. I wanted her to have a process where she invests herself in the character and she comes up with her own solution. That to me, that was very important, that she came up with her own method of empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it takes her a little bit of getting used to how like it works and all of that.
Exactly.
Like, poof, you got sprayed with magic dust. Now you have a superpower and know how to use it. And
awesome. That was something else I was very sensitive about. That by the next book, she will know most of her powers. I'm also leaving it open that probably Vulcan doesn't know all of her powers right now, because with the way we've established how magic works in this context, that she can shape her powers to a large degree, and they will be changing over time. Which is, something I wanted.
They're partly dependent on her, like, mental visualizations, and partly dependent on, like, whether or not Vulcan's remembered to put fire in his forges.
Yeah, but also notice that she doesn't need it.
Well,
that she influenced the forge too.
Right. Like it's a two-way connection. But like it would be really funny if at some point Vulcan just like is busy doing something else and completely forgets, and the forges are like at a really low power, and then she's trying to like do something and can't do it as well as she thinks she should be able to. That would be hilarious. That would be a good like middle of the book getting stuck point.
Consider your idea stolen.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't know, like.
Yeah, and that's something I want to play with, is variable power levels.
Really fast, and it like causes Vulcan's forge to explode or something.
That's true.
I have no idea.
I would love that. I love little curves like that, and one of the things that used to thrill me back in the day was Marvel had put out a series of comics that actually gave like the power levels, concrete
Mm-hmm.
power levels of their characters. Like, you know, this character can lift like 18 tons, this one can lift 22 tons. And I, as a writer, I would find that incredibly limiting, you know, because
Yeah.
you look at, like, say, the early Superman, where it
Mm-hmm.
is established that he can outrun an express train, which means he can go about 60 miles an hour running. He can't fly, he can't see through walls, and even a bomb can injure him, and gas can injure him. And but as the need for greater challenges arose, his power level raised to the point where one writer described him as he could uh, snuff out a sun by just listening hard. And there will be times when I think it would be fun to have, Vulcana basically one punch a challenge. But by the same token, I want her to struggle and have
Yeah.
times when she can't just one shot a villain or
Yeah.
whoever her adversary
Well,
is.
that
And
makes
she
her more
works for it.
relatable too, because
Exactly.
like sometimes you have exactly the right set of skills to exactly that one punch a problem in the face.
Yeah.
Like you're like, I could do that, and then you do it, and then it's done and it's over. And other times you're like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I don't have any of the
Mm-hmm.
information. I can't do
Mm-hmm.
anything. Somebody else come rescue me.
That's it. That's
So,
it. And I
yeah.
think she's that. I think she's that type of character too. That I don't see her running away from most challenges, and she's probably stubborn enough to tackle almost anything. But
Yeah.
she's going to meet
But
some
that doesn't
resistance.
mean it's going to be easy every time.
No, because then I'd start writing short books, and that doesn't seem to be happening with Vulcana. I just, it was one of those cases where I fell in love with the character pretty much, and the more I think about her, the more stories I come up with. So
Mm-hmm.
she's got a pretty rich tapestry, and we haven't even explored her personal background yet.
Yeah, hardly at all. I'm curious about like what happened in her tours in Iraq and what happened with the ring and what happened with her previous relationships and like all of
Mm-hmm.
that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I will be answering those questions eventually.
Yeah. That could be a good, I don't know, it could be a good like comic book is like a little escapade from her time in the military, sort of like a pre-superhero comic
Sure,
as
sure.
like a prequel. That would be cool too.
That would work. And that's one, like I said, that's one of the reasons that Trevor and I are going to be working on the comic book um, to explore aspects that maybe don't rate a novel or
Yeah,
might
but are still
slow it down.
interesting.
Yeah, are still
Yeah.
interesting and will add dimension to the character. And I think the people that will read the comic book will get more from the books in the process.
Yeah.
And by the same token, I hope that I can get some people to read some comic books, like the novels, because comic books should be supported.
Yeah.
I love the art form. It is a challenge to write them. I'm
Yeah.
currently doing a lot of comic writing at the moment for various and sundry people, including myself. But it is a good challenge. I like I like looking at other genres or other ways of telling stories and asking myself, well, can I, as a writer, embrace the limitations and the strengths of that? That's how I got into
Yeah.
playwriting. I wondered, can I write a stage play where basically you have one set, a handful of characters, and you've got to set conflict, resolve it, etc.,
Hmm.
without taking 2 weeks. Each type of writing has its own strengths, has its own limitations, like screenplays, teleplays,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
Um, and I think knowing how to do something in another means of storytelling helps you in other ways. It's like if you worked in a department store, you might be in electronics, but it might also behoove you to know how to sell jewelry, how to fix the
Right.
toilets, how to stock the produce shelves. Everything makes you better at your specific job if you know how to work with everyone else's.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting too because, like, I don't know, when I was first learning poetry in middle school, I think there was a lot of controversy between structured versus unstructured
Yeah.
poetry. And we
Mm-hmm.
had like writing assignments that were structured and unstructured. And I always liked the structured ones better because it was more interesting to me to figure out, okay, how do I say what I want to say and
Mm-hmm.
still have it fit in the structure?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas the free form ones are like, well, you just write whatever you feel like writing and then you're done. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to me.
I agree with you. Yeah, I tried some of that in college too, and I like you. I found that I appreciated the structured ones a lot more. If for nothing else, they're more of a challenge to execute.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I love haikus. I adore the haiku form because if you
I
if you
like
got
reading haiku, but writing haiku I don't like. I like things that are longer.
yeah.
This is why I'm writing serials. I'm like writing novels and serials and like
Mhm.
I have a couple of short stories that are in between novels like your comics would be.
Right,
Um
right.
but like everything is really, and my novels are really, the story like starts
Hmm.
in book one and ends at the end of the series. It's not
Uh-huh.
like a series of individual little stories.
Right, right.
I don't know. I'm a long form person, I guess.
You and me both.
Yeah.
This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Even like I have a couple serials planned that are more episodic,
Hmm.
like something starts and ends in one episode.
Hmm.
But even those have like storylines that go the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah. There's
Well,
like a big goal, and then every episode is like, okay, how do you accomplish one little task?
uh-huh. Well, it's like one of my favorite comic book writers, a guy named Paul Levitz, used to write a team book called The Legion of Superheroes for DC Comics, and there's like about umpteen bazillion characters in there because it takes place in like the 31st century, and it encompasses uh, myriad planets and races and such. And the way he would plot them is he would have an A, B, and C plot. And the A plot would be the one that's resolved in that specific issue. Then you build up the B plot and you introduce the C. Well, then the next issue, your B plot moves up to the A space where it is resolved. Meanwhile, your C plot moves up and gets a little more gravitas, and you deal with it the next issue. But you introduce a brand new plot thread that you deal with. And
Oh, that's really cool. I like that.
yeah, it was this
Yeah.
progression
It's
of
like a braid of plots.
yes, yes, and it's one of those things also where if you don't like the A plot, you may go flipping through the issue and you go, oh, this C plot looks pretty interesting. Let's see what happens next time. And I looked back, and that's the way that Stan Lee and some of his cohorts wrote a lot of the 60s Marvel stuff, that they would
Hmm.
execute the main plot in that particular story or sometimes the next issue, but always be bringing up other plot elements that would then be developed. So you always had fresh material coming in, but you were also resolving what had gone on before, which
Hmm.
I'm big on structure. I am huge on structure.
Yeah.
Like I've said, I plot this stuff out to within an inch of its life. Um, my Vulcana plot, I believe, was something like 10 pages long, single spaced, with just like little breaks in the paragraphs. And if I were to dig it up, it'd have like little margin notes still. And even then, once the characters really start to form in your head, you use it as kind of a general roadmap.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between saying, okay, I need to go on Route 24 to the northeast, and then after a while you just say, okay, just need to head east. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
get there eventually. I will get
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah.
That's when I moved from being a writer to being a stenographer of these
Yeah.
people's lives, which, and that's when the magic happens. That, for me at least,
Yeah.
as a writer. And I figure if
Yeah.
I can surprise myself, then, maybe I can surprise somebody reading the book, which would be kind of cool.
Probably because you've read so much.
Yeah, and by that time I'm
Yeah.
sick of this plot. Let's get something new here. So
Yeah. It's always fun, like, I don't know. I don't know if you've had like where you get like two-thirds or maybe a third of the way through and you're like, this is like old and boring and I don't want to write anymore. And then
yeah.
something happens and it makes you like excited again. And you're like, oh, thank goodness.
Oh
I can
yeah.
write again. Yay.
Yeah, I usually don't have so many of those roadblocks with my outlining method because it's like an early warning. It's like, okay, this is not going to
It's
go
not,
anywhere, or I know I've got to do something
no.
to spice this up. But just the same, I find myself getting surprised. It's like we talked about last time with my Bloodshot book, where I intended all the characters that I created to die, but then I'm at the last chapter and I realize when I'm going over my notes again to make sure I'm wrapping up all the plot lines that one of them somehow saved himself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm as confused as anyone about this, but we
Yeah.
went with it.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, like, if I know too much detail about the plot before I
Mm-hmm.
start writing,
Mm-hmm.
I'll get to a point where I've been writing for so many hours that like I'm
Yes.
bored of the story because I know like the whole thing in my head.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I feel like I've read this on endless repeat for 10 days. I'm done.
I hear you.
So sometimes that happens and then I switch to something else for a little while and then come back to it and then it's all better.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You
Yeah.
need to look at it with fresh eyes. That's a
Yeah.
very good idea. I admit I did not have that with Vulcana. In fact, um, as I've told you and many other people, that I'll write 3 to 5 pages a day, and if it's good, yay me, self high fives. But with Vulcana, I was getting so much into the plot, especially as the characters were starting to interact and starting to really take shape in my head, that I'm writing 10, 15, 25 pages a day just because I want to see where it winds up. I'm as surprised as anyone. So
Yeah.
it was
I've
a
gotten
joy
to
to
that
write.
point with the one I'm working on right now, which is super exciting.
Oh,
So,
that is. That's
and
great.
well, I didn't exactly plot it out. I sort of did a storyboard, but instead of pictures, it's words.
Oh, that's nice. I
And I
like
did
that.
one storyboard for each of the 4 main characters.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like one box for each episode.
Oh, that's neat. Almost
So,
like a comic book.
I guess a little bit.
Let's talk about this new phase of your career.
Like so general that it probably only means something to me.
Yeah.
To remind me what needs to happen in that episode so that I don't like get sidetracked.
Yeah, which is why I outline, because I have the attention span of a mayfly, so I have to be careful of that.
I always think that I can cover more distance in one like novel or one season of a serial than I actually can. So like the 13 episodes of this, which is it's coming out very soon. The first episode I'm going to release early, and then the rest are going to start in September.
Cool.
And I'm going to do a podcast where I read the episode out loud.
Oh, nice.
And then the same week that episode airs on the podcast, it will be in like print as well, like ebook. And there'll be a pre-order for the complete season because I don't want people to like read ahead and spoil it for other people. So the season is not going to come out until after the season is over.
Well, but, awesome.
Basically, I had intended to get twice as far by the end of season 1 as I'm actually going to end up.
Yeah, I'm laughing in sympathy. Trust me.
Yeah, and I have a bunch of other series where like I have the idea, and then that turns into like the 4th or 5th book because I keep asking questions, and then I have to write about their parents, and then their parents, and then like.
Yeah. Well, and I know how dangerous that can be when you start asking those questions. The second stage play I ever wrote was about an ad agency that was corrupting humanity just for the fun of it. And I had this one character who appeared on stage briefly, but I wanted to do more. And I asked a question of myself, well, how would she react to all this if she had anything resembling a human conscience? And it's one of the few times I ever had writer's block. For about 4 days, I wrestled with this. I couldn't come up with a. She asked the question basically of one of the noob characters, what happens when you get bored and you have all this power? And that
Mm-hmm.
stalled me for 4 days. And then finally, the answer came out of my subconscious, and we finished the rest of the play, and it worked out well and helped me wrap the thing up actually more gracefully than it was originally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was a pretty uncomfortable 4 days
Yeah.
because there's all of a sudden the play went from being frivolous to extinction level serious
Yeah.
with just that one question, and I wrestled with it, but it got done.
But
It
that's
got done.
fun, like in plays, because it starts out as being comedic and awesome and happy, and then it
Mm-hmm.
turns like then at the end there's some like thing that's very that makes you think, you know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I like those. But
Well,
yeah, for sure, like when there's too many possible options, that's
mm-hmm.
when I have the hardest time.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
and you
not
don't
when
want to
there's
limit
no
yourself.
options, it's when there's
Mhm.
too many.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that's why I'm grateful when my characters kind of seize the reins, because then it's almost like I don't have to make that choice anymore. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's Angelique did that, not me. I didn't leave a
Yeah.
furniture in there. Don't get on my case, people.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming to our discussion.
Well, thank you for having me. It is always a treat. I am delighted always to talk to you.
All right. Um, we have another book next month. It's a romance, completely different. So,
Oh,
next week we'll be doing that one.
cool.
All right. For now.